It's hard to take him serious when he talks about other guys taking food off his kid's plate when he's driving around here with 10 different cars, you know? Stephen A., you have a problem here with Baldwin's comments?
Well, first, let me say ouch and damn. I mean, what a comeback. What a comeback. Let me say that first. Secondly, I must acknowledge to you, I don't have a problem with that. You know, I would have a problem if Michael Bennett was minding his business and just going about his business of playing the game of football, and Doug Baldwin felt the need to come out and say something like that. I would have a problem. I would think that's crossing the line. You know, you don't need to do that to a teammate. But if Michael Bennett is out there opening his mouth about what he wants every time somebody else gets something they want, like Doug Baldwin, a $46 million deal, or whatever the case of Russell Wilson or whomever, and Michael Bennett uses that as an excuse to bring up his own finances, then I think it's totally in bounds for Doug Baldwin to say, pump the brakes a little bit. You know, you ain't the only one that's out here working your butt off trying to be the best that you can be and get paid so you can take care of your family. You know, you ain't the only one doing that. Some of us are doing it too. And by pointing out that some of you are doing it and then bringing up the 10 cars, you know, that's a good point, because if you listen to Michael Bennett, if you talk about things a bit too much, then you give the impression that you sort of suffering. And Doug Baldwin was pointed out, brother, you ain't suffering. We understand you want some money. We understand you might even deserve that money. But the flip side is that you far from the poorhouse. You walking around with 10 different cars. Now, I didn't know that about Michael Bennett. Don't particularly care about those particulars as it involves Michael Bennett. But Doug Baldwin is pointing out something very astute and very accurate when he's highlighting the fact that you can't go around talking about the money other people's making, the money that you deserve, acting like you struggling, when clearly and conspicuously that's not your situation. That's not your case, because it comes across as you griping and throwing salt on what other people are after. And Doug Baldwin basically just checked him on that. And Michael Bennett doesn't hesitate to check people. I like Michael Bennett. I like Martellus Bennett. I like them brothers. I think they're good people. I love the fact that they are outspoken about a lot of different things. I'm fans of theirs. But that doesn't mean that they're completely flawless. And in this particular instance, I think Doug Baldwin is the one that's right here with what he said, because of why he felt the need to say it. This was provoked by Michael Bennett. And that's what needs to be recognized here.
Boy, that is an excellent point. But, Stephen A., I'm surprised that you missed the bigger picture here.
Sure.
Now, first, I want to preface this by saying I love Doug Baldwin. He's one of the most underrated players in football. One of the most underrated. Deserved all the money. If he and Russell Wilson were on a team that cared more about, like, how much they're running up the stats and less about winning, people would recognize how good Doug Baldwin is. But I don't think he should be talking about, whatever the provocation, he still shouldn't be talking about Bennett's money. Even if he feels in a roundabout way Bennett's talking about his, I don't think it makes it right to talk about Bennett's. And I really like Bennett. He's an interesting guy. You know, media week before the Super Bowl, he's the best quote. He's interested in books and ideas, and he's outspoken, and he can ball. Like, I'm a fan of his. But this is actually what's happening, Stephen A. Right now, you know who's laughing at all this? Laughing. The owners are laughing, because I want to make this very clear. A salary cap is intended to do this. It has nothing to do with competitive balance. That's revenue sharing. You can revenue share, that'll create competitive balance, but a salary cap, and remember, they rolled the players back on the percentage of everything. A salary cap is simply 100% of the time, always and only, about diverting funds from the players, from labor, to the owners. That's all it is. You take money from them and you give it to the owners. So what kind of an atmosphere does this create? It means, hey, here is the finite number of dollars to be shared by the players. You are not subject to free market forces for your services. If people want to bid on you, kind of, that's fine, but there's a finite number of dollars, and it's going to be artificially suppressed by the cap. And so what winds up happening is everyone starts bickering and fighting for their little piece. And if Baldwin gets paid X number of dollars, that necessarily means there is less money for a guy like Michael Bennett. And that's really what's being addressed here. The fact that Bennett will not be able to get his true market price, neither did Baldwin, even though he got paid, by the way, because every dollar you give to Peter, you must rob Paul from. Necessarily, it's a zero-sum game. So what happens is the players turn on each other.
Yeah, but what I'm saying to you is this. With that being said, are you saying that I get where you're coming from in terms of dissecting what transpired, but do you agree with Martellus Bennett? You think he's a victim here? Or you think Doug Baldwin is what are you saying?
I don't think Baldwin should ever be talking about Bennett's money, even if Bennett was talking about his two wrongs don't make a right, and even if he feels like Bennett is slighting him in a roundabout way without even using his name, he's still, that's hypocritical to say, Bennett's being hypocritical, so now I'm going to be hypocritical going after him. That doesn't make it right.
Yeah, but the point is that, look, man, here's the reality. People, you are allowed to be annoyed and somebody gets on your damn nerves. You've pulled that off with me a couple of times in the last 3 weeks, okay? And you only been on the job for 3 weeks. I mean, people get on your damn nerves sometimes, and sometimes you got to check them. That's what you got to do. And that's the way it goes. It's not ideal that Doug Baldwin did that. But Michael Bennett keeps griping about what other people are making. And Doug Baldwin is like, wait, making a good point. Why don't you come around with 1 car instead of 10? Maybe we might feel sorry for you a little bit. Maybe we might empathize with your plight if indeed a plight existed. And so he's pointing out how you going to sit up here and act like you under some plight, you enduring some kind of plight or whatever. Pump the brakes, calm down, chill out, and stop feeling the need to talk about somebody's money. And sometimes people chirp too much. You got to check them. You got to silence them.
Yeah, but
maybe,
think about
just
what
maybe,
he's saying, Stephen
Michael Bennett might shut up because of this.
I think you're making a very strong point there. But think about what he's really saying, what he really did there, Doug Baldwin. When the real issue is they have to fight over the finite dollars that are artificially suppressed by the owners, Baldwin's turning it around and making it an issue of conspicuous consumption on the part of Bennett, which I mean, and that's really not the issue here, but he's making it the issue.
Yes,
so even the content of what he said isn't good, let alone the kind of hypocrisy of calling someone out for being hypocritical.
The fact of the matter is, when was this collective bargaining agreement signed? It was in 2011. We are now in 2016, 5 years in to a 10-year deal that should have never been signed. Anybody that knows anything about their business in professional sports know that you don't sign no damn 10-year deal without an out. What you do is at least have an out like year 6 or 7. We're getting ready to discuss the NBA and their collective bargaining agreement months from now. You know why? Because even though they're in the throes of a deal, of a multi-billion-dollar deal, both sides have the license to back out of a deal if they feel it should be renegotiated in their best interest. The NFL players elected not to do that. And as a result, Michael Bennett is clearly smart enough and wise enough to know that. So why do you keep chirping? That's what Doug Baldwin, who graduated, who's from Stanford, that's what he's pointing out, and I don't think he's wrong about that.
By the way, you're right about that, too. Another strong point, but aren't you the same guy who, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, at some point this week, we're talking about, hey, don't send out that message that they need to batten down the hatches and save their money for a union fight because the NFL is going to win that anyway? Now you're saying that in the previous CBA, they should have driven a tougher bargain even if it meant a long lockout?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that instead of committing to 10 straight years without an out, have an out by year 6 or 7 like the NBA has. That's all I'm saying.
We can agree on that.
Because what you're dealing with right now is them having to wait until 2021 in order to renegotiate a deal that they've been whining about since 2011. Yep. So they will have spent a decade whining about something where they could have at least negotiated an out, and they failed to do so. These are issues that Michael Bennett is smart enough to recognize. Doug Baldwin clearly is smart enough to recognize it. So we don't want to hear Max Kellerman coming out of the woodwork talking about how collective bargaining is the real issue and the owners and blah,
you're gonna
blah, blah,
hear it.
when in fact they know their conditions. So what you whining about it for all of this time if you're Michael Bennett aiming your eye at the players when you should be talking about the owners?
What we do agree on is get it together, NFLPA. Get it together. You got another one coming up in the not too
What else
distant
we
future.
agree on is don't talk about another person's family or money, and you will save yourself a lot of headaches. Word to the
Wow,
wise.
you just won the debate.
How about that?
Coming up next, Kevin Love had an up-and-down year for the Cats as trade rumors were flying all season long. Should Cleveland ship Love off to somewhere else or stick with the big three they have? That debate coming up next on First Take.